to our next lesson. This one's going to be tough. How do you manage teams when they're fighting? It's going to happen. We would prefer that everyone gets along, but if they don't, you need to know what to do. So this entire lesson is how to manage teams so that they can fight. It's okay that they fight. Actually, really good things come out of it, really good ideas. However, it's going to be your job to manage them while they're fighting. So let's take a look at what some of the experts tell us to do. Again, back to Harvard Business School. We're going to be looking at Eisenhart, Kahawaji, and Bourgeois for some guidance. And here's what we'd like you to think about. Think conflict is a dirty word. Is it? Especially for top management teams? It's actually valuable. You really want to have that, especially for team members so that they can roll up their sleeves and spar and fight with each other. That's actually what we want to happen if they do it right. Now, constructive conflict can help teams make these high-stake decisions under considerable uncertainty and move quickly in the face of intense pressure. You might be the one giving them the intense pressure with deadlines. Now, this is going to be especially true in today's world where everything is fast-paced. We want to introduce to you the concept that we call the Big Six. The best teams use the following 6 tactics to separate substantive issues from personalities. Remember, we don't want people to get along we want them to get along as people, but we want to separate the personality from the issue that they're fighting about. So number 1, let's say that a fight has broken out, a verbal fight. We hope it's just verbal. Focus on the facts. You, as a manager, or even if you're in this team, arm yourself with a wealth of data about your business and your competitors, because probably this team is going to be trying to be competitors, so we want to know that background information. This is going to allow you to encourage debate on critical issues so that you're not just arguing out of ignorance. You really want to get your facts right. So before you get into a fight, remember, most fights are about personalities. Get your facts first and stick with the facts of what we're talking about. Now, here's an example. There's a company that we're going to call Star Electronics. The little star you see here just means that we've made that name up so that we respect the anonymity of the company that we were actually taking a look at. Now, Star Electronics, their top team measured everything. They looked at bookings and backlogs and margin and engineering milestones, cash, scrap, work in progress, everything. They also tracked the competitors' moves, including product introductions, price changes, and ad campaigns. So when you have all this information and you're going to be having a fight with one of your teammates, you're going to know what you're talking about. The second tactic that we encourage you to take a look at is multiplying the alternatives. So in weighing decisions, consider 4 or 5 options at once, not just one at a time, but all at the same time, even if you don't support some of them. As a mix, you might support them when they're in a conglomerate. Now, this is going to diffuse conflict. It's going to prevent teams from polarizing just around 1 or 2 possibilities. So if we're talking about 4 or 5 options in combination with each other, then typically everyone on the team is going to have a little bit of something that they like. An example here is to improve Triumph Computer's lackluster performance. The managers had gathered facts and then brainstormed a range of alternatives, including radically redirecting strategy with entry into a new market and even selling the company. So all ideas were on the table. Now, the team combined elements of several options to arrive at a creative, robust solution. So it's okay to make it really complicated and talk about multiple different solutions that are hybrids of each other. Number 3 in the tactics of the 6 is to create those common goals. Unite a team with common goals. So even though the people are fighting within the team, they need to get along that we are a team and together we want to succeed. This is going to rally everyone to work on decisions as collaborations, making it everyone's interest to achieve the best solution. So you have to have that common goal in there. An example for tactic number 3 is going to be Star Electronics' rallying cry, their motivating message, was the goal of creating, quote, the computer firm of the decade. And their competitor, Premier Technology, was to build the best machine on the market. So we kind of want to have these statements to get people really motivated. Strategy 4 is to use humor. A lot of cultures don't bring in humor, but it's amazing what progress you can get with it. So humor, even if it seems a little contrived or fake at some times, it does relieve tension and it promotes a collaborative spirit within a team. Typically, when I'm negotiating or things get really tense, I throw in humor all the time, and it really lightens up the room. You could do practical jokes, Halloween, April Fool's Day celebrations. You could have dessert parties. Get everyone to relax. This can increase tactfulness, effective listening, and creativity. When you have these parties together, people start to see, oh, you're a human being and I like you. So when we have a fight, I might not have as nasty of a fight because I like you, because I see that you're a person now. Strategy 5 is to balance that power structure. Now, we all know that the CEO is more powerful than other executives, but other people also wield substantial power as well, especially in their own areas of responsibility. Now, this lets the whole team participate in strategic decisions, establishing fairness and equity. So remember to balance that power structure. And number 6 is that we want to seek consensus with qualification. Now, if the team cannot reach consensus, the most relevant senior manager can make the decision. We would rather the team make consensus, though, so really try to get consensus. But if you can't do it, the most senior manager can make that decision, and that can be guided by input from others. Keep in mind, a lot of people may not like that decision, so once you say to the boss, we can't decide, you may want to reconsider that because probably most people aren't going to like the decision. Now, like balancing the power structure, this tactic also does build fairness and equity, but a lot of people on the team don't get what they want, which is why they tend not to like that decision. So before you go to the boss, try to work it out again. Here's an example for you to take a look at. At Premier Technologies, the managers couldn't agree on a response to a competitor's new product launch. So ultimately, the CEO and her vice president made that decision, and she commented, the function heads do the talking and I pulled the trigger. So again, if you really want to move up with the corporation, get the solution on your own, and then the CEO will see that you're actually someone that can move the ball forward. Now, how teams argue but still get along is going to be the difference between tactics and strategy. So let's take a look at our slides on the left here. That the tactic is you could base a discussion on current factual information. You could develop multiple alternatives to enrich the debate. Now, the strategy that we're doing here is to focus on issues and not personalities. So when people start yelling at each other and name calling, we may have to tell them, hey, back up. You can't tell someone that they're stubborn or they're mean or they're not listening. Forget about that. We're not going to get anywhere by focusing on that. What is the issue that we are currently debating right now? Forget about personalities. Let's just talk about the facts. And now let's come up with some different alternatives on what we could do with those facts where we can now move forward. And we're not even going to have a discussion about people being rude or not listening. Please don't do that to people, but resolving that issue is not going to move the company forward. Just tell people, forget about personalities, what's the issue, and let's move it forward. The next tactic is that we really want to rally around the goals. This is what's going to unite us again, and that's where we can actually get along because we actually can rally around those goals. This is where you could be injecting humor into the decision-making process. The strategy that we're trying to do here is that we're trying to frame these decisions as collaborations, and these are aimed at achieving the best possible solution for the company. So again, when we've got these issues, we really just want to focus on what's the goal, what's the end game, and hey, by the way, what's the deadline? What's the deliverable? Let's get back on task and figure something out. Otherwise, we're going to be sleeping in the office all night. The next tactic that I'd like to review is maintaining that balanced power structure. We want to resolve the issues without forcing consensus. So the strategy here is that we really want to establish a sense of fairness and equity in the process. So when we're not reaching consensus, maybe we do go around the room and say, hey, could everyone really talk about individually what do you want to do and why, and where are you willing to bend? Where are you willing to maybe give up a little bit of something? What are your non-negotiables, so that we can really say, how can we move the stalemate or impasse out of the way? And this is going to require people to bend. So now we're kind of talking about doing some sacrifices here. Again, for the common goal that we need to come up with a solution. Otherwise, we fail as a team. So this typically gets people back on task when we just say, look, we need to resolve this, and we don't want to force consensus. Now, here are ways where that you can actually build that fighting team. So we ask ourselves, how can managers encourage the kind of substantive debate over issues that leads to better decision making? Well, we're going to be providing you today with 5 approaches that do help generate constructive disagreement within a team. Remember, they don't have to get along. It's okay. We actually can get some really interesting creativity if they don't. So here's approach number 1. We do want to assemble a heterogeneous team, which is going to be including diverse ages, diverse genders, different functional backgrounds, and different industry experience. If everyone in the executive meetings look alike and sound alike, then the chances are excellent that they will probably think alike too. So if you want to get a really creative solution that's going to beat the competitor, get teams that are different. I think rainbow teams, and a rainbow just has lots of different colors in them. Approach number 2 is meet together as a team regularly and often. Team members don't know one another well very often and don't know one another's positions on issues. This impairs their ability to argue effectively. So frequent interaction is going to build that mutual confidence and familiarity that team members require to express dissent. So get them together, which means long and often Zoom meetings if you're not going to be meeting in person. Approach number 3 is we want to encourage those team members to assume roles beyond their obvious product, geographic or functional responsibilities. So devil's advocate, which is another way of saying someone that always takes the opposite side, always takes the argument. People that are these sky-gazing visionaries, someone that really thinks about changing the universe, thinking about making a whole different market 20, 30 years down the road. Also, action-oriented executives can work together to ensure that all sides of an issue are considered. And then approach number 4, we want to apply multiple mindsets to any issue. So try role-playing, where perhaps a shy person acts like an aggressive person, or vice versa. Or maybe your role is to actually argue against your idea because you know what's wrong with it. You might be only talking about what's good about it, but you know what's wrong with it. Taking that devil's advocate role with the role playing could actually expose the issue, and your teammates could help solve that problem before you launch your product that has something wrong with it. And they come back and say, hey, did you know that there was something wrong with this when you suggested it? So it's really good to get this one out. Role playing's great. I really love role playing. You can put yourself into the competitor's shoes. So you could role play as a competitor. You could conduct war games. You could actually be like a disgruntled employee. You could be a customer that just can't be satisfied. So role playing is actually a lot of fun, and you come up with some really interesting things. And it's people laugh. So it actually brings the humor back into it. More humor, more creativity to solve those problems. Now, these techniques are going to be creating fresh perspectives and engage team members, which will spur interest in problem solving. Now, when you look at this slide, approach number 4, you might say, well, that looks really interesting and that's fun. Do it. Role playing takes effort, but it's fun. It's time consuming, but do it. When you come out with these amazing results, because I've done role playing quite a bit, you'll be shocked at how effective it is, and the side effect is it's fun. Approach number 5 is to actively manage that conflict. So don't let the team acquiesce too soon or too easily. Identify and treat apathy early And don't confuse a lack of conflict with agreement. So often what passes for consensus is really disengagement. So when people just say, yeah, that's fine, whatever, yeah, that's okay, whatever you want, that's disengagement. That's not agreement. And that's a lazy team that's going to come up with a lousy solution. So watch for people who are trying to hide disengagement by pretending to agree. And you can tell with body language, they tend to sit back, they tend not to engage, they tend not to ask questions. They want to leave early. They show up late. Uh, they act differently. They used to put a lot of energy in the beginning of the meetings, but now they're very quiet. That's disengagement. So if you start to see that and they start to agree with everything that comes out, they just want to leave. They just want to go home. And we need to stop them and say, hey, you're not actually agreeing with this. You're disengaged. What's going on? Why are you disengaged? And then you're going to come up with a huge conflict where they say, I think you're going completely down the wrong way. And we want to hear that. Now, here's where we want to link that conflict, speed, and performance together. A lot of research has actually gone into this lesson. So a very large and considerable body of academic research has demonstrated that conflict over issues is not only likely within top management teams, but it is valuable. Such conflict provides executives with a more inclusive range of information, a deeper understanding of the issues, and a richer set of possible solutions. So the evidence also overwhelmingly indicates that where there is little conflict over issues, there is also likely to be poor decision making. So if there's low conflict and they're coming up with really fast solutions, people might be disengaged. Groupthink has been a primary cause of major corporate and public policy debacles. So make sure that we're not running into groupthink. Now, although it may seem counterintuitive, we have found that teams that engaged in healthy conflict over issues not only make better decisions, but move more quickly as well. So you might want to start a fight. Say, hey, you know what? This person is disagreeing and you're not giving them enough airtime. Let's really dig into that. Now, without conflict, groups are going to lose their effectiveness. They don't have to hit each other, they don't have to insult each other, but we want to really engage that conflict. It's worth it. Managers often do become withdrawn and only superficially harmonious. Be aware of that. Indeed, we have found that the alternative to conflict is usually not agreement, but apathy and disengagement. So really be on the lookout for that disengagement. And teams that are unable to foster substantive conflict ultimately achieve, on average, lower performance. So you can predict the performance based on how they behave in the meetings. Remember, if you have a low conflict team, they tend to forget to consider key issues, or we're simply unaware of important aspects on their strategic situation. So it's a good idea. Maybe you want to bring in someone who's argumentative, someone who always takes the other side, which is why, again, I'd encourage you, every meeting should have a devil's advocate meeting where someone just takes the opposite position no matter what, so that we can really dig into that issue and make sure that the decision's a good one. Also, we found that there were missed opportunities to question falsely limiting assumptions or to generate significantly different alternatives. So not surprisingly, their actions were often easy for competitors to anticipate. So your competitors love teams that are getting along, just trying to get the easy answer, they want to go home. So remember, your competitor is always there. In fast-paced markets, successful strategic decisions are most likely to be made by teams that promote active and broad conflict over issues without sacrificing speed. So the key to doing so is to mitigate the interpersonal conflict. Remember, we want conflict on the issues, not conflict between the team members. And here's your 20-minute homework. It's a reflection paper. I'd like you to review the last slides to see the recommendations to manage conflict. So just review the slides. Now write about a past experience where there was a conflict that was not resolved well. So I want a situation that didn't end well. And I want you to explore which of the strategies from this lesson would you have used to help the situation. And I want you to reflect on why did you choose that one particular strategy from today's lesson, And what impact do you expect it to have had on the past? So go into a past situation where you had a fight. It didn't end well. Take one strategy that you learned from today and write about, if you had put it in at the time, how do you think that would have changed the meeting? So I'm excited to read your paper. I love reflection papers. So I am looking forward to your homework, and I will see you at the next lesson. Bye-bye.